Podcast, the podcast in which we talk about everything and more. And today, I got a very, 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 very special guest, Jordan Saunders. Is that your last name?
Yes, it is. AKA Mr. Vibez.
Mr. Frickin' Vibez from the Vibrationz Podcast. And I think today we're going to get a little bit in touch with our spirituality side.
I'm with it, brother, man. Let's
Yeah.
do it.
You know, actually, one thing I wanted to talk about first, I was thinking about this when I was driving here, and you got a post. Is that a boot on your door? Is that a Buddhist post or Indian? What is that?
I guess you want to say that's more of a Buddhist post. Yeah, let that shit go.
Yeah, it's some guy meditating and it says, "Let that shit go."
Yes.
Super relaxing. What and that's what are those things called with their hands? It's a mudra.
It's a mudra, yeah. So it's a hand placement that's supposed to bring in a special form of energy to what it is that you're trying to create within yourself.
And do you know what the one he's doing means?
I don't know off the top of my head at the moment, so I'm gonna say no on that one right now.
But one thing I found really interesting, I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you said how Buddhism isn't really a religion.
It's not.
Right? It's more like kind of like a belief system. So you could actually be like a Catholic Buddha, Buddhist, Islamist Buddha, a Jewish Buddhist.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so one of the things about Buddhism is that, the Dalai Lama, who's kind of like, if you want to compare it to like, the Pope and Catholic, that's like the highest point of the spirituality.
So Dalai Lama is like the
Pope of the Buddhist community, right?
Okay,
But
okay.
without there being the whole hierarchical thing about it. And basically what it is that the Buddhist system of belief is that you are living this life and you are building yourself within this life, but you're not supposed to have this, because religion is to control of your mind and to do something. If you actually break down the actual Latin root of religion, it actually means to control of the mind. That's what actually religion actually stands for. Okay. So I'm not dissing religious people. I'm saying this is what the actual word frame actually is representing.
Really? That's what the word religion means? To control the mind?
If you break it down to its Latin roots, because everything comes from the Latin root word, and if you can break it down from that point, relay means to control. Jean is the study of. So the study of controlling of the mind is what religion actually stands for. And so it's really crazy when you kind of learn about root words and you don't like, oh, that's what it's actually supposed to mean. So Buddhism, which I love about it, because again, I've studied different types of belief systems and religions, and I'm more omnism than everything else, which means not any one belief or religion is the truth, but you can find the truth within, you can find small truths within each one.
I agree with that. That makes sense.
And for Buddhism, it's a belief system to where it's almost like you're studying yourself, and you're studying inner peace and inner comprehension. I try to refrain from understanding. I like to say you can comprehend things better. And from there, you can go, okay, I'm not going to do these things, or I'm not going to think this way, but I still have, I still believe in God, or I still believe that, in Mass, or I still believe in all these different things. But how you carry yourself, how you are actually interacting with other people, it can be more Buddhist than in that belief system than religious, in my opinion.
Okay, but there are certain things that I think Buddhists tend to believe. Like I think a common concept in Buddhism is like they believe in reincarnation, right? And kind of like reincarnation is almost like a punishment. Like you didn't reach enlightenment, right? Like the only way you don't get reincarnated is being enlightened in this planet and in this realm.
To a degree, I would say that, yes. That would be maybe the Buddhist perspectives. I haven't done that piece of the research into reincarnation, whether it is reincarnation is a bad thing or a good thing. But however, reincarnation, I think in my personal opinion, is not a bad thing. Yes, you may have reincarnated and maybe there's some lessons you didn't learn the last time you were here, but it also means it gives you an opportunity to bring something even better to the world, right? Because sometimes, yes, maybe you did everything you needed to do in your last life. Now you've upgraded, right? So now maybe you need to come back into physical form so you can use maybe some of those same abilities earlier on to do an even higher impact for the world. So there's reasons why people reincarnate. It could be for good or bad reasons, but honestly, if you're reincarnating, I think it's an opportunity for you to grow even more at a higher capacity, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So you think when somebody reincarnates, it's the same soul in a different body?
Souls, so...
I find all that stuff really complex and really...
There's a lot of different things. So let me kind of like trail back a little bit, if I may. since my belief system is the law of one, which means everything and everyone comes from the same source. It comes from one specific place, and you can have different names for it, different ways of talking about it, but it's all different versions of the same thing. It all goes back.
And if you want to get really nerdy too, that's what the whole Big Bang was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I mean the reason so the universe expands radially, right?
Mm-hmm.
It expands in a circle, so that means that at one point it was all at a single point. Everything in the planet was touching a single point.
Exactly.
Right. So that kind of proves to what you were saying. We all come, like literally everything here, and China and another galaxy. We all come from the same source,
yes.
The same point. Right?
Exactly. So yeah, if we want to get into the scientific, literally like that, Big Bang. It all started from one point and then exploded outward. Right. Mm-hmm. So you have that, and then again, you can go into the fact that was there something before that? No, that's another topic. But yes, everything comes from the same source. So your soul, which is a fractal, again, a fractal meaning a small piece of what a bigger picture is, came from there. And in the law of one and in this study, you are learning that your soul is actually learning different things, and every time you pass on, you're bringing back information, kind of like a computer. Small piece goes out, gathers enough information. When the job is done, meaning you pass on to the next life, you come back and you bring another piece of information from this specific soul, from this perspective, back to the source, right? Because if you are if you are an omnipotent being.
What is omnipotent?
Omnipotent meaning you are ever-encompassing, you know all things, you are always there. You're, if we want to look at superheroes and we want to look at, the like Dr. Manhattans, from The Watchmen, or just these crazy different depictions of these almighty type characters.
What's the difference between that and omniscient? Is it the same thing?
Omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. It's more like I see everything, I am everything, I know all things. Okay. So those are the words we mean. And when you are this thing, if you are, which we all are, and you're like, I would like to know more about myself, so I can do this thing which every human can do, which is called dreaming, right? Mm-hmm. I can live any type of life that I want and create it in the way that I need to, so that I can know more about myself. So picture this: you are this crazy being that has all these powers, and you're like, I want to know more about myself. So you create billions, just gonna use that number, billions of other versions of you, all different types of thoughts, all different types of feelings, all different types of looks, all different types of characteristics, all different types of vibrational alignments and dimensional passings, and I'm looking at it from more of the actual, like, way up, down, like, towards Earth. There's different versions of each life that you could be living. Even every decision that we make chooses a different reality. If, we chose to have this podcast on this day, and we're talking about this subject. If we had it yesterday, you could be asking me different questions.
Completely different, yeah.
Completely different. And the moods could easily be different. All these different things play in to the fact that realities change all the time. So we're going back to the omnipresence. Okay, now I'm going to create different versions of myself, and they're all going to learn these different lessons of these different variations. And when they're done, they're going to find their way back home, which is almost like if you're looking at a thunderstorm and the rain leaves a cloud. The cloud and the raindrop is going, and that distance from it leaving the cloud and hitting back to the water, that's the soul's life. That's all these different versions and lessons and different viewpoints and clashing against these other different souls on the way down back to the water. That's the life. Boom, you've returned back home. You've returned back to the ocean. Because remember, when you see a raindrop, you never see that raindrop again once it hits the ocean, right? It's lost forever. Boom. Your period from falling back down to where you initially came from, because everybody knows the water cycle, it starts off with the ocean, it goes up into the clouds, mm-hmm. Clouds perspire and form, and then they rain, and then water goes back down to the ocean. If the ocean is God, or whatever thing you want to call it, source, anything, you are a piece of that source. Mm-hmm. Where most people will get confused with spirituality and religion, religion is believing that there is a conduit or a person or thing blocking you, or you have to pass through in order to get to source, in order to get to God, or get to this enlightened state.
So what blockage would it be in like Christianity?
Then you'd have Jesus. It's not a block. It's just everyone is going through Jesus to believe that they can have this particular grace thing bestowed on them. Spirituality is remembering that you are it, right? Is remembering that you are a piece of everything that's been created. That you are the stars, you are the trees, you are the ocean, you are the sands, you are, Guy, you and I are the same. We're just wearing a different mask. Yeah, hey, exactly. Man, you have a really good looking mask. I want to let you know.
Thank you so much, baby boy.
I appreciate it. But we are all the same. It's only the illusion that we create within ourselves that we believe that we are different. And the more we learn on a soul level, and what I mean by that is when what we are learning in interactions and situations and experiences, if we can take these negative or positive experiences and go, okay, and which is what Buddhists are really good at doing, which is not being affected by the everyday, realizing that whatever is happening on the outside is also what is happening on the inside.
Yep. What's that one saying? As
within, so without. Yeah. As above, so below.
Yeah.
So if I know that, okay, I had this person say some really mean things to me in this way, and they have tried to make me feel that I am lesser than, which recently just happened, then I'm not going to play into their battle, because whatever they're saying to me is what they're feeling on the inside. Mm-hmm. So if I can think it and therefore apply that knowledge, that's my viewpoint. So why am I going to get upset by this person hurting? This person's hurting for whatever reason. And I brought out their hurt for some reason. Okay, they can send me their hurt, but my job, which is what Buddhists are very good at doing, is transmutation. What is transmutation? Knowing that taking whatever energy is coming, transmuting it, meaning putting it into a different form, transforming it, meaning to make it even more present with something else, and sending it back out in a way where everyone can learn from it and be a positive understanding.
Mm-hmm. So, man, that was incredible, dude.
That was a rant. I apologize.
No, don't apologize whatsoever, dude. I learned so much there. It's my brain's just like, oh my god, Jordan, just keep talking. It's like, it was almost like listening to you talk there was almost meditative. You know?
I've gotten that, I'm not trying to be cocky, but my voice for whatever reason puts people in a transient state. I don't know why. It's just like, people are like, your voice just makes me like want to go sleep, and I'm like, all I'm doing is talking.
But not like sleep in a boring way. Sleep in like, oh, I'm right now present in the moment, listening to whatever Jordan is saying, and I don't care about what he said or what he's gonna say. I'm just listening to the words right now. And next thing you know, you're fucking sleeping, bored out of your mind. So how did you get like into your spiritual journey? What made you decide to get into this and stay through it all these years?
So it's kind of funny. I've always had some type of spiritual insight or outlook on life since I was a little kid. It's just it didn't become prominent until I turned 18. So when I was...
And you're 23
now. I just turned 23.
Okay, yeah.
Because my birthday just passed.
Uh-huh.
So it was great. When I was 18 years old, I had my big... Not necessarily my first wake-up call. I had a lot of those. But I had one of my very first real slaps to the face of waking up and going, how I view things is not necessarily what is to be believed.
Okay.
And that's a starting point.
That's pretty much a way of saying I'm not always right.
I'm not always right. Mm-hmm. What I'm holding on to and what is hurting me and what I have based my viewpoints on life, and life has been so not great that I need to make changes. And I think that is a great way of looking at how one should wake up. If you realize that your life is just not working out the way you want it to, something has to change. And does it hurt enough for you to make a change?
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big part. So when I was 18 years old, I had an experience where I had what you would call a flash forward or a psychic view, where I knew a bunch of things were going to happen to me prior to them happening. And I know a lot of people would be like, oh, he's just claiming something. And trust me when I tell you, I went through literally 3.5 years of thinking that I was crazy before I became okay with any of this. So when people were like, "Oh, you're just saying this to say it," I'm like, "No, I really don't care."
Give some concrete examples. What do you mean?
All right, so when I had one of the first ones was there was a period of time in my life where I was actually in the military. I was enlisted with the Army National Guard.
I didn't know that. Okay.
It was a very small stint, so I don't really talk about it. But basically, I went to this thing called RSP, which is a recruitment sustainment program that the Army has. And I was enlisted with the Army National Guard. At that time, I was 18, and I was a senior in high school, so I couldn't go off to basic. I wasn't able to go to basic until I graduated. So while I was there, my very first day, met all these guys, all from different parts of California. Never met them in my entire life. By the end of the day, we were having this very serious talk, and there's about maybe 12 people in the barracks. And we were having this really serious conversation with all the guys, and these three individuals who I was talking to, there was a moment where I felt like I left my body. I was no longer actually talking to them as me. There was something else that was there. It was a strong feeling in my own body. And I can literally, as I'm talking to each individual, I'm seeing the moment in their lives, their age, their location, the surroundings, all these different things of where in their lives they lost their light. They lost their will of hope that things were going to be okay.
Really?
Yeah, all three of these different individuals. One guy who had the biggest ego in the room, one guy who had been there longer than anybody else, and then one other guy who we were just talking. And I'm thinking I am talking out of my ass. Trust me, I thought that I was just bullshitting the bullshit. But then I have all three of those individuals look at me with a serious face and going, "How in the world did you know that?"
Did you know what?
That the exact age, the exact form of their pain, what they were going through in that time frame. I knew it all without them telling me. There was another one years before that where I was 11 years old, and there was a situation going on with my family, and I had to go talk to this guy outside. And he, I just had this very strong feeling that he was going to try to kill himself. So I told him, and again, I'm 11 years old. This guy's 41. I told him, "Don't go killing yourself." And he looked at me with the strangest face, and he goes, "What makes you think I'm going to kill myself?" And I said, "I don't know. That would be a really stupid idea for you to go do that." And he goes, "You're a really intelligent kid." And I'm like, "No, it just makes no sense for you to kill yourself. I don't know why you do that." There was another one where I had a friend of mine back in high school.
And why would he do that? He was depressed or something?
He was depressed, and there's a bunch of stuff that I'm not going to get into on the podcast for that reason. But that being that, and then I had a friend of mine back in high school who was molested by her uncle. And only her best friends knew. I had no idea about this whatsoever. But I had this dream where I had seen this guy open a door to this room. As I was thinking about my friend, this guy was wearing a tank top, he had a bald head, and I couldn't see his face, and it was a silhouette, but he walked into the room. So I walked up to my friend, and I said, "Hey, did this happen to this particular girl?" And I get pulled into the other room and asked, "Who the hell told you?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Who told you about this?" And I'm like, "No one did."
You said, did this happen? Did she get molested by her uncle?
Yeah. I actually just asked the question to my friend. I was like, "Hey, did anything like this happen to this girl that we both knew?" And she was really upset with me because she's wondering who in the world told me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nobody. No one in the world told me. So it's been really odd having to explain why I know certain things to people. And they ask me, "How do I know that?" And I'm like, I don't know how I know it.
Man, if you know things you shouldn't know, then we probably shouldn't be hanging out.
Well, again, these are all random occurrences. But I am an empath, which means I feel people's pain. So if they're going through something and they tell me, "Oh, I'm fine," I know they're bullshitting because I can feel that they're hurting. So it doesn't really make sense for me. That's why I keep my energy very secure. Because I don't want to be feeling people's pain when I don't want them to. That happened a lot when I was younger, and I've been getting better at being able to have better protected energy around me as I'm moving through.
And that makes sense too, because a lot of the times, just because somebody's feeling pain doesn't mean you necessarily talking to them will help, right? A lot of the times it just, because that's how I feel sometimes with anxiety and stuff. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
That doesn't care who it is. I don't care if it's a therapist, psychiatrist, friend, mom, girlfriend, whatever. You kind of just want to keep it into yourself, and whenever you're ready, you can talk. So it's good that you learned to do that, because
well, I made a lot of mistakes. It was more of there were times where people didn't want to talk about anything, but me being a bulldozer, and how I also learned to I'm big on ripping yourself open to understand yourself better. And why I say that is it's like the phoenix rising type. You burn yourself down, the old version of you, and through the ashes you create yourself anew. Mm-hmm. So while I was growing up, it was 6th grade where I decided I wanted to get in psychology because I wanted to figure out why I thought differently, why I looked at things differently, why certain things didn't make sense to me. So I loved how people did things. Like, I didn't necessarily like people. I'll be very honest with you. People themselves I wasn't really interested in, but people's minds and how they think. Okay. That is what I was interested in. And I'm like, okay, why do you think this way? And why do you do this? And why are you in pain? And how can you fix yourself? So I started in 6th grade. Freshman year of high school, I met my mentor who really helped me out, kind of understand psychology better, spirituality better, and then even understanding my own personal gifts better. I did over 4,000 counseling sessions in high school with students, older, younger, and even teachers, helping them through their issues.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Did all when that you were in high school, 4 years?
Well, I was doing it even before high school, but yeah, through the high school program where I went to,
wow, okay.
I was helping out a lot of people through that. So I did a lot of years of dealing with from the most pettiest things of someone breaking their pencil in like the 4th grade to, people being sexually assaulted or murders or
really?
Things of that. Oh,
I didn't know this, dude. What the fuck?
You would be really surprised, and because again, right now I believe it's either 1 or 2 in 4 women get sexually assaulted in their lifetime, or will be in that particular situation.
That's crazy, dude.
It's not fun. It's not fun, and I've talked with a lot of people about it, and it's rough. And for a person who has had power taken away from them in one shape or form, not in that capacity, but has lost it, it's not. And being an empath, I feel for them on a level where it's like, damn, I really wish I could help you. At the same time, this is, and I'm saying this with high levels of caution, if someone has gone through that, in the spiritual sense, your goal as much as possible is to forgive that individual. Because
I agree, but I also agree with you saying caution, because a lot of people will take that out of context and be like, oh, you're being a rape apologizer or whatever. No. And it's far from that.
Far from that. I do not condone any man or woman raping or sexually assaulting another individual. And I say men or women because both parties have done it. Yeah. And I'm not excluding
Especially
anyone.
In jail.
Especially in jail. Yeah. So I'm not condoning the action whatsoever. I want people to understand that 100% of the time. At the same time, your goal as a soul is to transmute pain. And to switching it. So, as an individual, the reason why I say let that shit go, and it's right there on my poster, it's because it is not for you as a soul, as a human being, to hold on to so much hate and so much frustration and so much pain. It is not your job to feel responsible for somebody else's mishap. That person who caused you the initial pain is going through a level of pain that match the pain that they gave you, if not more. So I try the best I can to never condemn somebody for doing something to me. My job as a soul, because I have trained my mindset to look at it this way, because I want to be at peace. It's not for them, it's for me. I want to be at peace. Yeah. So I need to go.
That's ultimate level empathy right there. I like that.
That's just practicing of going, I want to be free of pain. I want to be free of holding something against somebody else, even if it's valid. Mm-hmm. Holding on to acid to believe and drinking it and thinking you're going to affect the other person does you no good, because all you're doing is destroying yourself.
Exactly.
Right? It's almost like you had a really bad breakup and you were angry at the girl or the guy, so you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, saying, I protest this person, I detest this person, so that, for whatever reason. But that person's living their life, you're just hurting yourself.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not hurting that other person, I'm sorry. Especially if they have no remorse or they don't have empathy for it. And a lot in our society right now, it's like, something happens and you get maybe a half-assed apology or you don't get an apology. And a lot of people are like, no, I want someone to apologize to me. Great. Someone could do that. Does that make you feel any better? No. You need to learn how to apologize for yourself and learn how to accept your own apology and your own forgiveness and move on. That's probably the biggest thing you can do, because nothing stays. Nothing. Everything is always changing. And when people can learn that process, they will learn slowly but surely that they can control their lives, and they will find more peace of mind in that way.
Dude, I really liked what you said too. But also going back to what you were saying, like forgiving the rapist and having peace for yourself.
Or just any attacker in general.
Exactly, attacker, a rapist in that example.
Mm-hmm.
But it even goes to, like somebody murdering your child or something like that.
Yes.
It's the phrase I like to say is that you forgive everything, forget nothing. So forgiving everything would mean like somebody did you wrong in some sort of way, forgive that person. Don't have any hatred in your heart. Forgetting nothing would mean don't forget there's consequences to your actions, right? So in your example, a rapist, you can forgive a rapist, but you can still want him to suffer the consequences. It's because like we live in a society, we have to have laws that tell people that this is not okay, right?
Yeah.
But there's a difference between having consequences for what you did and forgiving someone.
Oh yeah, exactly. Someone could punch me in the face, and I'm like, ow. Now I can forgive that person for punching in the face, but I won't forget that they punched me in the face. And it's like, you still punched me in the face, so I'm gonna punch you back, or I'm just gonna walk away, depending on the situation. But it's not for me to go, now I have hatred in my heart for you, and now I'm going to condemn you. Because the moment you try to condemn somebody else, you must condemn yourself. Because there's nothing separate from you, right? So when you tell someone to go to hell, you're telling another piece of yourself to go to hell.
Yeah, I like
right?
that. I like that.
If I'm one of the biggest things that I learned, because I do have a martial arts background, right? So I started off with wrestling. I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Krav, Tai Chi, and a few other things.
And why did you do all that? Was kind of like a way to.
I was angry.
I
was very angry growing up, and I wanted to. Well, there's a few reasons. Mainly because I was angry, and I wanted to send my energy in a way where other people who were also in that same type of context and that mindset, where I was willing to exchange blows with somebody who was also willing to exchange blows, and we're both growing each other. The other piece of that was I have a lot of energy, and I also like being aggressive, so doing sports that is human, body-to-body contact, and learning more about what I can do with my body. Those things have always interested me. Plus, fighting is also psychological, so there's an actual psychological aspect to fighting as well. If you know how to work it psychologically, you've kind of beaten at least a good 45% of the fight if you come in.
What do you mean fighting's more like psychological?
So, yes, fighting is all about, how skilled you are when it comes to throwing a kick, a punch, a grapple, a submission, whatever. But you also have to have the right mindset when you're going into a fight. So, it's been a while since I've been in the cage, so I'm only going off the experiences that I've had. But when I did wrestling and when I did mixed martial arts, you have to have a mindset where it's like, I'm going to win. There's no ifs, no buts about it, and you train your mind to think that way. Like, okay, if I'm in a down position, how can I be in the better position afterward? If I'm at the top position, how do I maintain that? If I don't know this person, what do I need to study about this person so that I can, be aware of how they fight? You need to psychologically have a way of going into and even coming out of a fight, whether it's a win or a loss, so that you can properly execute on all levels as a fighter. That's kind of why you need to have a psychological background. It's like fighting in war. It's psychological. All these things are psychological. You need to have some form of framework in your mind and a coldness or a willingness to go to a certain length or degree that another person may or may not be willing to go to gain a victory.
Actually, not for some reason when you mentioned war, maybe we could get a little bit into this. Mm-hmm. Might be a little controversial, but
controversy.
you mentioned so when you mentioned war, I was thinking I feel like if women were in power, we'd have less wars, but then obviously it'd be a whole different society would be completely different.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think spiritually, physically, emotionally, what do you think are some differences between man and woman? Because I tend to think I read this in The Power of Now, I think it was by Eckhart Tolle.
He's Eckhart Tolle fan, yeah.
Yeah, he said something like a woman have a lot easier time channeling and themselves and finding inner peace because they're forced to their whole lives, right? Through whether it be like when their period, like once a month, they have to really know who they are and deal through that, or whether it's be giving pregnancy. So what do you think are some differences between man and woman, spirituality?
So women, what you're talking about is the divine feminine and the divine masculine.
Sure, yeah.
So both parties are needed, right? It's the yin, the yang, The kundalini, which is both masculine energy and feminine energy, are there. Feminine energy is powerful and is necessary because they are already trained to become to be in tap with their emotions. Now, women on the sacred level, let's go back to the Egyptian times and around that time frame. Women were revered and were always in a position of power, and there was always some form of like a goddess or someone that they would be worshiping, because women naturally, I mean, think about it. They have a womb. They birth life. They literally give life, and men wouldn't necessarily exist if it had not been for women first, to a degree.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because you know how like Egyptians, they have like those little hats that it almost looks like a wig.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was to represent like feminine energy. So like men would wear these hats to represent like they had these long hair that would make them more feminine.
Yeah, and they also had makeup, all these different things. These are all these things that people are doing. Even like seduction. You realize that seduction was created by women to fend off men during those time periods where Egyptian medieval times. Seduction was created so that people. Men would stop raping women, and that women would have
really?
more. Yeah, that was the reason.
How does that work out?
So if you
women seduce men so they can stop.
So that men would stop raping and taking control over women, and women had no power for many centuries, millennia. Women didn't have. They were literally regarded as playthings. That was literally the case for long periods of time.
Do you watch Game of Thrones, or have you watched?
I have watched Game of Thrones.
It's
yes.
kind of like the cow and I think the blonde chick, the Gacelies or whatever.
Exactly. They were just regarded as like tokens. You do with these things as you please. While you think, young girls at 15 years old were marrying 40-year-old men. Okay. All these different things, they were just to produce and to keep on moving. When seduction was created, I'm actually reading the book The Art of Seduction currently right now.
Who's that by?
Crap, it's the same guy who wrote The Power of Now. I can't remember the book right now. No, sorry, not Power Now. The 48 Laws of Power.
We'll look at it.
We'll look at it later, and we'll let people know. But that's the part where seduction, the art of seduction, and creating fantasies for men to be drawn into by. So it's not right away, okay, I'm going to take what I want from you, whether it's physical or whatever, and then move on or kill you. It's like, oh, you're interesting. You created fantasies for me. So Cleopatra, who, one of the last Egyptian, queens, pharaohs, she was like, okay, I'm going to seduce all these different types of men. So she was more of like a vixen. She could transform herself and be all these different fantasies for men to come to and be sucked into her desires. So that way they would leave their kingdoms, or they would fall prey to some type of attack. All these different things were created. And then eventually women got so good at seduction that men were losing their kingdoms. Men were being drawn away. So then it switched, and then women had control over men and lost the ability for men to like even really communicate with women. So men adopted the art of seduction from women and then now reframed it for men. Have you ever seen guys who kind of have more feminine qualities, but yet they still pull a lot of women?
Yeah.
Women are attracted to what they are. So if you can produce more feminine-like features, but still keep your masculine.
Just like when you go out and you want to smell good for a girl, you don't wear cologne, you wear perfume.
Exactly. You wear something that they're like, oh, that smells really nice, and that's an immediate attraction because it's the same thing that they do to us, and it works back on them. That's how the seduction thing came into play in the first place. So, getting back to the war thing and how women and men differ. Men are action, think of the sun. Women are the moon, think of thought and think of intuition. Both are useful, but without the other, they become, I would say, detrimental, because they can collapse on themselves without the other person being there. Because you can really be in deep thought, but then never have any action. That means you are way too much in the sacred feminine or the divine feminine, and you're not anywhere in the actual masculine, because the masculine is driven in its form of action. But you can be really in the divine feminine and then just be in thought all the time, but then it'd be detrimental to you because you're not placing anything on action.
I actually agree with that, and this might be really, really controversial, maybe even homophobic, what I'm about to say, but fuck it. Anyways, like you even see like homosexual couples, whether it be female, male. You see, it seems like there's always one of the two tends to be more masculine or more feminine than the other. Like, you'll see like a really pretty, almost like a model type of girl who's super girly, going out with like this one girl, I mean, who could almost be considered, I mean, like a guy. Like, she's really masculine, the way she dresses, the way she talks, the way she handles herself. And then same with guys, like you see a lot of like gay couples. You have like the one tough gay guy, and then you have like this super feminine gay guy. Obviously this isn't a universal rule. It's just something I've noticed.
And I noticed
don't
it too.
dog on me too much, but it's just something I've noticed.
And yeah, and you're making an observation. I don't think that in any way it's homophobic. I think you're just speaking what you're seeing from your perspective. And one of the things that I would also say about that is, because it is just an archetypal role, there's always in some way someone who is more masculine, and there's always someone who is always more feminine in any type of relationship. Because then it's just weird if you think about it. Like, well, now we're both men, and we're just being super masculine. So which one of us is, I'm going to be funny here for a second, which one is going to be on top, which one is going to take it out the bottom? Who's the pitcher, who's the receiver? There has to be a give and take, and that's just a relationship in general. So somebody always feels more intuitive, and they feel more in their emotional feels. Some are more masculine, they're more driven, and they're more action dominated, right? And whether it's homosexual relationships or even heterosexual relationships, there always is gonna be that. Even there are some women in heterosexual relationships that are more masculine, and their counterparts, their males, are more feminine. They just that's just how it is sometimes. And that's not a bad thing. It's just which in your soul, what are your lessons you need to learn, and what with this person are you matching? I know there have been people who and this is old age saying in sex is like, oh, you can bring the freak out in any girl. You just have to be the right type of guy to bring out that right type of freak, right?
Yeah.
It is to a degree true. Some men do not have this this dominating presence that a woman feels that she can be submissive to. That being said, there are some women that have a very demurring presence that some men who are not on that same level will cower or bow to. Not in a negative way. It's just that's just where their soul contracts are lying in.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And so speaking of souls, my mom was talking to my dad the other day, and they were talking about, my dad was like, he's not really spiritual, he's more religious. And he was telling my mom, who is more spiritual than religious, me and my mom were pretty close together, and we travel in our spiritual journey together, and we help each other out. And she was saying, my dad was saying, like, Lucy, my mom, Lucy, it doesn't make sense that, let's say a couple thousand years ago, there was like, let's say 1 billion people on the planet, right? And now there's like 6 billion people. So how would you explain 1 billion souls to like 6 billion souls?
What, in what context? Meaning like how it grew, or what?
Yeah, because our as population grows, do souls grow with it, or?
Okay, I see what you're talking about now. So that is different. So when it comes to coming on to this, so Earth and in the Milky Way galaxy, and the dimension that we sit in, the vibrational alignment that we sit in, is what you would call 5D. Now,
what?
5D. It's 5-dimensional perspective. Now, it's not 3D, because 3D, there's certain things that we can do here in 5D that look past that. So this is a 5D reality. The vibration, the energy, the laws that govern this plane of existence, meaning the fact that, okay, if you and I look at a cliff and we jump off that cliff, we're going to be falling off that cliff, right? That's law. But if we were in a different dimension, different things would apply. Okay. So in order for a soul, a fractal of sorts, to come into being physical and in this particular dimension, there has to be a contract to come here in the first place, and they have to wait in line. It's a waiting game, actually, to come here.
Interesting. Okay.
This is a tougher dimension than almost any other dimension that you can go to. This is where master souls come here to learn and to manifest and to grow.
Okay. I feel good about myself now.
Well, that's why do you think everything is so fucked up and seems that everything seems so off? There are certain things that naturally do not make sense on a spiritual level, or even on a regular level. It's like, why are we paying taxes? Why are people having to go to a job? Why are these things here? Why do humans have war? There's certain things.
As 50 Cent once said, death is easy because life is hard.
Exactly. Anyone can die. Yeah. And you can commit suicide, and this may be controversial, but there's nothing wrong with suicide. It just means you have to play this game over again.
No, I understand that, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like, think of it this way. If you look at life as a movie, and let's say you don't like this movie, right? You just walk out of the theater. Granted, you paid for it, which means you might have lost out some money. And you never finished it, which means that you might have to come back to do whatever this is again.
Yeah, okay, I like that.
That's kind of the viewpoint. And I learned that from, you know, I've got that saying from like Aubrey Marcus, and I've gotten that from Brandon Beecham from the Positive Head podcast. And, you know, I've learned a lot of different things from a lot of different people. So I've agreed with it because that's something that I viewed on. So when you're looking at souls coming into this alone, it's like a waiting game. Okay, you got cleared, you waited this long, boom, you can go in. When you come here, you actually choose the parents that you have.
I've heard that before.
Right? And it depends on what it is you were supposed to learn this time around. So you have like let's say parents are already here on the planet. You can be like, all right, I'm going to have these parents because these parents are going to teach me these things as I'm learning through this life. And this is the situation that I will be in. And I'm going to grow through this. And this is how I'm going to do it. So you choose your parents. Your parents bring you into the world, however it shows up. And then you can't come into this vibration. I mean, you can't be born until your karmic events, the certain things in this world, line up perfectly for you to be here. Think about that for a second. The day that you were born, the time frame that you were born, there was all these things that lined up so perfectly that your parents met at this time, that this happened this way, for all these things to happen for you to show up in the world.
That's a good point. Yeah, no,
how fascinating is that?
I never thought about it that way.
If people took the time to realize that even them showing up on this planet is something crazy, that's amazing. And souls are lining up by the bit to do this. Now,
so I guess let me cut you off real quick.
Go ahead.
So in my case, it would be like, go back a couple of generations ago, like my parent or my ancestors, some people came from Italy, and then some other people came from Germany, and then they mingled, and then Portugal people they came to Brazil, and they all met there, and they mingled, and then roll forward fast in time, my parents met because their ancestors did that, and then now I'm here. Interesting. Okay.
Think about that. All these different events, if they did even the slightest thing differently, if your dad didn't meet your mom, or maybe chose another woman, or if your mom chose another guy, you could still be here, but you wouldn't be you. Yeah. You wouldn't have these different qualities. You wouldn't have any of these things. So that's that piece. So from 1 billion to 6 billion, right? That's how many souls are trying to experience this now. It just means that the capacity is growing. And if there's ever been a scenario in the world where there's multitudes of things coming, that means something bigger is about to happen for all these things to experience. And in my opinion, I believe that the world is about to get a huge reset. There's something coming energetically, and there's something that is happening, which is what you're seeing with politics, what you're seeing with the fall of government, what you're seeing with, you know, the people, you know, bringing up random things, and, you know, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, where people, you know, are focusing on ethnocentrism. What that is people call it racism, but it's not racism because we're the human race, right? So you're human, I'm human. If you and I cut ourselves, we're both going to bleed. If we get shot, potentially most of them, we can die. All these things, we are all humans, right? There is no racism going on because we're not fighting different races. If we were going against animals, that could be racism. And technically, there probably is some version of that. However, if we call it what it is, ethnocentrism, which is the technically correct term of it, because we're battling ethnicities and cultures.
Yeah, but then it's to be like, can you imagine? Oh, that guy's an ethnocentrist. Like that's so much harder to pronounce than racist.
It's harder to pronounce, but if we look at the fact that words are spellings, right, and you cast a spell when you speak words.
Oh, I never thought about it that way. Interesting.
Spelling.
Oh,
get it?
Wow.
So
that's a golden nugget.
And I learned, and that's one of the things that I've learned, you know, from another friend of mine who hopefully you guys will talk on the podcast one day. But it is true. That's why when you look at religion, when you say religion and you say certain words in certain ways, they will put a spell on whoever it is that is talking to, which is why speaking technically is a very archaic form of communicating, which is why you've always seen movies where people are doing more symbols and hieroglyphics and stuff like that. Those are speaking true intent to what it is that they are trying to convey. Humans right now are just at a level in society where telepathic communication, which actually is very possible, and we see that with women actually more than anything else.
What do you mean telepathic communication, and we see it with women?
Women inherently know how to communicate without saying words. Because
Oh yeah, 100%.
telepathic communication.
Way better than men.
Telepathic communication.
Okay.
Every person can do it. There is going to be a day on this planet where these forms of us may not be here, where people will look at each other and they will know intention. They will know why they are why they're even in the same presence with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being a smooth talker where you're trying to pick up a girl and you're trying to have sex with her and you're using all these words and you're conveying a story and you're trying to get this girl to believe your story so she can fall for you and you can do whatever you want with her, she'll just know and you'll just know and then you guys can go from there, versus having to do this whole playing out thing of this dance that technically can be swayed any other way depending on the intention and depending on how well a person can speak. If you're a really good speaker, you're a really good, spellcaster to a degree.
I like that, man. Shit, I'm a wizard.
Yeah.
Not at all with this accent. Nah, my accent's not that bad.
Your accent's lovely. What are you talking about?
Well, there are a couple words I can't pronounce, like words with TH in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Bathroom, I pronounce with an F for some reason.
Yeah, that's just some things. I mean, I have a family out in Jersey, and they can't say certain words. They'll like slur it or something like that. Yeah, I mean, every type of dialect is spoken differently. So I guess there's no judgment there. It's just that's how you speak.
No, I know. You got family in Jersey?
I do have family. It's on my biological dad's side. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my pops, who I talked about a little bit earlier, my family is from Jersey, and then my mom was born in California. So, but I have family that comes from the South, so like North Carolina, Texas, things of that nature. My grandfather came from New York City, so I have East Coast, blood in me, with just a little bit of Southern style as well, and then born in California. So there's certain things that I have inherited genetically that would make sense for me to do things, and people who I've met on the East Coast were like, you kind of have an East Coast vibe to you. And I'm
really?
like,
okay.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's funny because I've never been to the East Coast. So when I talk to them and they're like, oh, you got a little bit of an East Coast vibe to you, I'm like, how? I've never been there. It's just I have family from there, so maybe it passed on genetically, or I ran into a few people. But that's honestly about it. So but really going back to, I just want to make sure I solidify this, the 1 billion to the 6 billion is just souls wanting to experience what's about to happen here on the planet.
So you think there's, let's make it a little bit more concrete, you think there's maybe like infinite amounts of souls?
There's always an infinite amount of souls, and then even when a soul goes back to source, there's always a chance that they can just break off again, but it just starts from the very beginning, meaning it just goes back to normal. It's almost like if you could see a whale or a sea turtle that has lived forever, 100+ years, whatever, right? And it finally dies. But then another one is born. It's just another version of the same one. It's just a different time frame of why that soul is going about. But souls, if you really want to get into the deepest, of occult studies, there are souls that have lived on since before these dimensions were created, and have seen, and you've experienced them, and they've come in different forms. If you want to talk about Buddha, if you want to talk about Confucius, if you want to talk about Martin Luther King Jr., Gandhi, Jesus, Yeshua, Jesus, whatever you want to call him, different sources, small fractal sources that channel higher levels and different vibrational energies of source that still can come into physical form to teach the young souls that still are here about how to live. I heard this quote one time, and it really made a lot of sense to me. Young souls learn to take responsibility for their actions. Mature souls learn to take responsibilities for their thoughts. Old souls take responsibility for their happiness.
Ah, I like that.
Right? So if you're a young soul, and honestly, if you use that framework and then interact with people after that, and watch how you can tell when people are young souls, when they're mature, and when they're old. Young souls are doing a whole bunch of reckless shit for the most part, and they're learning, and they're realizing that their actions have consequences. Okay. So they're learning how to do that. Yes, you'll see that with children, but you'll see that with teenagers and adults, and even old people as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Just because their age may be older doesn't mean their soul is actually at their age. It's a completely different thing.
That makes sense.
The second piece is, mature souls. Their thoughts. Well, thoughts create actions, right? So if you know how to control your thoughts, you know how to control your actions, and therefore your thoughts can then be meditated and learned so that you have proper action going into things. When you're older and you know about how that you need to control your thoughts, and you know that your actions produce consequences, now you can just learn how to be happy what do you want in this life? What do you want to be doing in this life? What do you want to have, and who do you want to be around, and what experience would you like to have? As an old soul, you just create, and you just learn, and you just take the consequences of your manifestations as is.
What's that one saying? It's like, when you're in your 20s, you're worried about what people think of you. When you're in your 40s, and your 50s, you don't care about what people think of you. And when you're in your 70s and your 80s, you realize that nobody ever cared about anything of you.
You are a product. One thing I see where you're pointing is, I'm going to probably say it a little bit differently. At the end of the game, the king and the pawn go into the same box.
Okay.
Right? Which means, in a larger standpoint, it doesn't matter what you do, who you are, how you think in this world, we're all ending up in the same place, which is 6 feet under.
Okay.
Yes. Is that a grim way of looking at it? Probably. Is that the truth? Yes. Which means if that's going to happen, then why are we judging people? I saw this other post where it had a king, a peddler, a robber, a banker, and maybe a few other different labels of this person, right? And they're all in bone. They're all bones, and they're all in a coffin, realizing that there is no difference at the end of the game. There isn't. You and I are building a podcast, building podcasts together. You and I are growing spiritually. We are going to have the life that we're going to live, and I truly believe you and I are both going to go far. That is exactly how I see things. Mm-hmm. At the very end of the game, regardless of what level of fame, finances, body, physique, number of kids, whatever, you and I, at the end of the day, whenever given point in time that time is called upon, we get called back home. And that's just how it's going to be.
I like the way you put it. We get called back home. It makes it seem a lot more relieving, and a happy way of looking at it. Which I actually think it's probably a real way of looking at it.
Well, I can't say all cultures, but I would definitely say that majority of cultures outside of America look at death as a celebration versus a grieving. Right? Yes, grieve the people you lost, but celebrate them. Celebrate the love that you gave to them. Celebrate the life that they had. Celebrate who they are. And passing on is supposed to be a joyous thing. You're supposed to be like, awesome, that person got a chance to pass on to the next life. They get a chance to learn a new start of their soul cycle. Congratulations, right? You've moved on. You've done something better for yourself. Great. And guess what? One day we will all be there, right? It's going to happen, right? And people who are like, oh, I want to live forever. Why? Yes, you can be on this planet for 100 years. You've learned a lot. Fantastic. What did you give to the world in that 100 years? There's people who have given more in 20 years, even in 10 years, even in 5 months of them being alive than some people do in their whole lifetime. It depends on how the person wants to play the game. And there's no wrong version. There's just versions that are going to get you into a higher state of vibrational alignment with the universe around you. And there's times where you're just going to be in lower states. And everybody's going to go. Everybody has a light and a dark side. Which one do you want to feed? Where do you want to go? And there's sometimes you get the cards dealt starting with the dark hand. And you have to maybe transmute the dark to the light. Or you start off with the light and then you get switched to the dark. Every version of this game you can play. And it's a great game. But can you remember at the very end of it all that it's just a game and you're just here to have some fun? That's the biggest question.
Dude, we need to get you like a fucking TV show or reality show or something, man. That was fucking beautifully put. I don't know if you noticed, but I started tearing up a little bit, dude.
Thank you, man. I don't know. That's just my thought pattern. Going back to my background, I believe that I've lived life many times over. I've done this game a lot of times. I'm not being egotistical. I'm not doing that. I just believe that that's the vibration that I sit at. And my job of being here on the planet this time around is to help people and educate them on learning more about their own powers, right? Everything that I have done, I've done, to grow myself so that I can teach it back to other people, so that I can articulate it in a way that other people can understand of, hey, you could be going through pain and life like this may suck. There is ways for you to change it and changing your mindset on this perspective. The hardest thing that I ever had to learn how to do was realize that 1, change is consistent. Number 2, just because you want something does not mean it's the thing that you need.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Right? Number 3, nothing is stable. Nothing is stable. And that's okay, because it's always changing, right? And probably the 4th one was, I'm not my anger. That was probably the biggest one for me, because I'd always had...
That's a good one. I like that.
Well, because I'm naturally very calm, but if someone pisses me off and like really, or if I allow someone to piss me off, I'm not going to say pisses me off because I'm not going to give my power away. If I allow this person to piss me off, then what I have done is I have lost my control over myself, and therefore my irritation at myself for allowing this person to set me off is now on a very high level, and that irritates me. And this is also a lot of energy that you expel from being incredibly angry. So I used to be a lot angrier back in the day. I've worked very, very hard on being
angry?
Always angry. I just don't show it. I'm not emotive. A lot of people will get really confused with, I can be expressive and I can show things. Hard for me to do it, and I actually don't do it. I more internalize things. I process things internally. So people will get confused by me because they'll be like, you don't show any emotion. And I'm like, I know. And they're like, that's weird, that you seem like a serial killer. And I've been called that many times because I don't show emotion. And I'm like, that's not a bad thing. It's just what you're going through. I can't necessarily, I have empathy for you. I'm trying to find, comprehension of your situation. I just don't have the ability at this moment to convey on my own body and in my face that you're hurting. And some people don't necessarily realize that that's just how some people are. They get confused. They're like, oh, you're too calm, or you're too, and I run into this a lot, even in the dating world. It's like, I'm either too calm, or I'm doing too much, or it is a way where people just don't get that that's how I court. I'm not trying to win you over. I'm not trying to do anything. I have been raised with an old style of courting a woman, right? So how I go about doing it, and I've worked on myself enough to know how I am. So it's like, this is what I'm going to present to you. I bring my whole self up front if I'm going to be in a romantic relationship. Yes, is that a lot? Probably. Number 2, though, I don't know any different, because why am I going to hide anything from you? It makes no sense to hide from you if I like you. It's like, we can go slow. I don't need you to match me, but I'm going to bring myself to the scenario. It just depends on the person. So it's hard, to a degree, to date where I stand, because technically I look at things from a much different perspective. So it is a transition, so to speak, as you are growing spiritually, that your dating pool becomes a lot smaller, because not everybody's going to think the way you think, right?
That's true.
If you choose to play a different game that not everybody else is playing, not everyone's going to be playing with you. And if someone else from a different game tries to come and play with you, or you try to play the game that you never played or never wanted to play with people who have been playing this game for years, you're going to get sucked up and you're going to get spit out really quickly, because it's just not your game to play. I'm not a bad boy. I'm not going to pretend to be a bad boy. I'm not an asshole. I've actually had women tell me that I need to be meaner to get more women. And I'm like, why do I need to be something that I'm not to get women? That just means that the woman that needs me to be mean to them doesn't need me.
Yeah. Okay, I like that.
That makes no sense. It's like, why am I going to change for somebody? Why can't you just accept me for who I am? I can accept you for you, but can you not accept me for me? And then the real question is, can you accept yourself? That's probably one of the hardest things before even dating somebody or even doing anything. Can you accept yourself where you're at right now?
Man, Jordan, you need to date older women, dude. You are not going to find that in your
and that's
20s,
where I'm transitioning.
25s, even 30s, dude. You need to start going to like cougar clubs.
And you know what? You're not the first person who's told me that. It's true though. Like, I mean, it's funny. I've actually had like older women like me more than girls my own age, which has been hilarious. Like, and especially like because they'll be like in their 60s or their 70s, and I'm like, I'm not interested in it whatsoever. But like, what was it, like maybe a month ago? I had this black lady come up to me, and she's just like, handsome man. I'm just like, thanks. I don't know what to do with that, man. No. So there's a lot of transitioning in the dating, but if you're spiritual and you're trying to find, you know, a lady or a man who's going to match you, who's going to grow with you, who wants to work on the mirror. Because I think when you get into a relationship, you're willing to see the mirror of what you are. And you have to face your mirror. And then, because again, if you think about it, if your woman or your man is pissing you off, it's not them pissing you off. It's something about you that haven't really fully accepted within yourself, right? Now, granted, if someone's like snores all the time in your ear while you're dating, while you're sleeping with them, you should probably have a conversation with them about that.
Yeah.
But if it's like something that they're doing and it's not directly affecting you and it irritates you about this person, it's not them, it's you. And you need to work on you.
That's a good way of putting it, that it's not directly affecting you. Because, like, if somebody's just, like, yelling at your face 24/7, yeah, that's annoying. But if somebody, like, I don't know, if somebody does something to their hair or something that tends to annoy you, it's like, it could be you.
That's you. That means you, like, if someone's doing something with their hair and they're being more creative, that just means that you aren't fully confident within your own creatism. And now
okay, that's a good way of putting it. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through the emotions and I've just taken the time to study them. Anyone can take the time to feel emotions because you're not your emotion. You're just experiencing it, right? Mm-hmm. When anger comes in, I'm no longer saying I am angry. I'm doing the very best in my ability to apply. I have anger within me, right? Because now I have created separation from the thing that is no longer me, and I can actually talk to it and actually feel it as what it is versus becoming it and then acting something out that's undesirable. Doesn't mean that you're not going to feel it. Doesn't mean that it's not there and you're not going to express it. It just means you are not the thing that you are feeling. When people say I am depressed, you are, again, words and sayings are spellings. When you say I am, and I want to make sure I say this on your podcast, I am is the two words that are the most powerful words in the entire world.
Yeah,
I am.
I've read that book with my mom before. I think it's called I Am That I Am.
I am that I am.
And it's saying pretty much that I am is like
you're creating. When you say I am, you are telling the universe that this is what you are, right? So it's like I am an asshole. Guess what? You're gonna become an asshole, and there's gonna be everything in your life will show back to you that you're an asshole. If I say I cannot get women, guess what? You are going to have many variants in your life where you will keep missing out on opportunities because that's what you keep asking for. That is all about how you think and how you act. If people learn how to control their thoughts and their actions, and they learn to really narrow down what it is that they're looking for, which is, even me right now, I'm having a really hard time doing that, to really get as detailed as possible about what it is you want in your life. And then making it as big as possible, as large as you possibly can dream it. And then truly believing that it can happen and letting the universe work in your favor. Because think about it, you're a co-creator of your reality. And by co-creator,
what do you mean co-creator?
Co-creator. There's the universe and there's you. You are the universe. Therefore, even though there's certain things that are outside of your control, how you react and how you respond to these things is in your control, and that's the only thing in your control. If you say, I would like to have millions upon millions of dollars, and I want to have all the finest women in the world, I want to have all the luxuries in the world, and I want to be able to do anything that I want to, by all means you can have those things. But how you go about getting it and what the consequences that come with that will also show up. So you want to get detailed about how you want how you want it to look, right? Mm-hmm. You can be very wealthy and you can be miserable, or you can be very wealthy, or you can have nothing and be incredibly happy. It depends on what it is you are looking for.
That's funny that you say that, because I have a friend who did Peace Corps, and he taught English in some village in Africa or something. Mm-hmm. And the village where he was at, the kids had absolutely nothing. They didn't have iPads, they didn't have TVs, they didn't have cars or anything. But the kids were just so happy, so much happier here. And it's funny, like, the more they figured out about what they didn't have, like, there's such thing as iPads, and they do this and do that, the more sad they got. And it's almost like, yeah, you don't need anything to be happy. You are the creator of your life and your reality. And that brings up to my next point that I wanted to ask you about. What do you think? I know we've talked, we haven't talked too much about this, but we talked a little bit, is what do you think the difference between spirituality and personal development is?
That one. So I've actually been thinking more about that question since you asked it, and they do coexist hand in hand to a degree. Mm-hmm. But personal development is what I would say is the outward development of your spirituality, which is working with yourself on the inward capacity.
Okay.
So as you grow spiritually, you grow personally in your development. Your personal development is your application of the outward teachings of spirituality. That's where personal development comes in. If you learn how to be at peace with yourself and not yell at people when you get cut off on the road, right? Your personal development is you not yelling at people when you get cut off on the road. Because you can say, I'm very spiritual, and I know that I'm not supposed to yell at people when they cut me off on the road. The very next second you're on the road and you're yelling at people for cutting you off. You're not doing the personal development side of what spirituality is already teaching you. Spirituality, you can learn a bunch of things. You can never apply it. That's the biggest part. And I think that's where personal development comes in. Personal development is application and follow through of what you have learned through spirituality.
So I guess the way I view that, it would be like spirituality. It almost like spirituality like would be not even getting mad at the car cutting you off, right?
Yeah.
Whereas opposed to this personal development would be like more like actions, like not yelling at the guy cutting you off.
So here's a great example. When I realized that me leaking out energy because I had a driving job for a while, so me leaking out energy when people cut me off on the road and yelling at them or honking at them or trying to speed past them and try to get to a destination, faster or on time. That was, I understood spiritually that these things are going to happen, but my personal development of following through, of being at peace and being okay with the scenario, me being stuck in traffic or me having to deal with these things, that in itself, I didn't have a lot of personal development with it. So I had to keep applying it, and I had to keep learning, and I had to keep putting myself in that scenario so that now when I got onto the road and people cut me off, I only honk if it's naturally like I absolutely need to honk at these people.
Yeah, like you're gonna crash into my car.
Like, hey, hello, what's going on?
Yeah.
But then they also like if someone cuts me off, like right when like I need to go onto the left lane, they speed up. I'm more like they need to get somewhere faster.
Yeah, like that.
Like
yeah.
they have a baby in the side of the car and they're just trying to get to the hospital.
Yeah.
If you give yourself, it may not be the truth, but if you give yourself enough of a reason to where this scenario could be happening, then you become less angry, and then you rewire your brain personally so that you can not have a reaction when these things are going on.
I like that, and I guess I don't know if it's in my head, but I don't know if I'll be able to articulate it perfectly. But the way I view the difference between spirituality and personal development would be more like spirituality teaches you how to deal with stuff inward, how to deal with your emotions, take control of your actions, be the creator of your reality. Whereas personal development is more like there's a lot of overlap. It's like two circles, right? And they overlap.
There's a few that are in the middle, but they have this up on the side.
I think contrast circles. I think that's what they're called, whatever. And then personal development is still some of that, but it also teaches you how to apply those things to achieve material possessions.
Spirituality would be the feminine energy. Personal development would be the masculine energy.
Yeah, sure, if you want to put it that way. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because, like, you see a lot of the times, like, like these rich people, they're always telling you, like, oh, you need to focus on yourself to get to your goals. But the way I view it is, like, I don't need to get to my goals to be happy. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That would be more of the spiritual side.
It's the journey. It's mainly the journey that should be... in spirituality, it's all about the journey. Whereas personal development, maybe you have some goals that you're trying to line up with.
I think that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, it's just the journey. The journey in itself, because some people are goal-oriented and some people they're more process-oriented, is what I've learned. If you're process-oriented, then what I've learned is it has to look a certain way before you get to your goal. So you just care about what it looks like to get there. Some people don't care how you get there. They just want the goal. And in my opinion, since I'm more goal-oriented than process-oriented, I think it makes things a little easier because now I'm like, okay, I want this. So I'm willing to do what I need to do
I'm willing to sell drugs, whore my body.
But now that you have to get to integrity and you have to go to your self-values. But again, going back to being, like I talked about before, I think we get into the podcast, being humble and going to your lowest point to build a strong foundation so that when to reaching your highest point, you don't have anything on the bottom that you've missed, right? I talked about this the other day where you can jump levels in your growth, but you have to be willing to take on the consequences of jumping to those levels. So, for example, if I am a person who said, you know what, I'm going to stop doing heroin today, and I'm going to get my life on track. All right, and you're going to drop it that way. You're not going to go to a rehab center. You're not going to go through all those things. That's fine. Guess what? There's a consequence to that, though. The withdrawal is going to really suck. The people who you've hurt in that whole time frame that you have been on heroin, you got to rebuild that trust again.
Yeah.
All these different things. You can jump levels. There's a consequence to every level that you jump, which is why sometimes doing the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 process versus going from 1 to 10 is necessary, because shit, you could jump from 1 to 10, but you might land on 5. And if you don't land on 5, you might go back even further than where you currently were. So you have to be willing to go through a process that will allow you and allow yourself the same time necessary for you as the individual, whatever it is that your time frame needs, to process the things necessary so that when you reach level 10, you're not shocked by everything that's coming your way.
Yeah. You're actually at level 10 when you're at level 10.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that, dude. Well, I mean, I think we talked about a lot today. Probably enough for now.
Yeah.
Man, I had really fun. I learned so much, man. Like, I'm definitely gonna listen to this podcast once or twice again.
Hey, man, I'm so thankful that we finally got a chance to do this. I remember when you first talked to me about doing your podcast and what you were trying to do with it. And I just gotta say, man, I'm really proud of you. Really happy that you're doing it, and you haven't stopped, and that you're kicking butt, man. So I'm really proud of you and happy for you.
So, you have any last words? Talk about maybe the Vibrationz podcast? Or...
Yes, ladies and gentlemen. So for all you amazing individuals who listen to my boy Guy the G with the Everything and More podcast, please check out Vibrationz Podcast. We're big friends with him, so you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, SoundCloud, YouTube, and of course every other form of social media at Vibrationz, Vibrationz, not S, podcast. You can also find us at www.vibrationz.net. And again, if you have questions, comments, concerns, or you want to know more about how we think and what we talk about, please feel free to write us messages. And you can find me personally at Mr. Vibez with a Z 420 on Instagram.
As an avid cannabis user.
You're
super lit right now, bro. I smell that shit on you, goddamn.
Actually, funny enough, I have not smoked at all today.
Really well.
But I made sure to stay. I wanted to not smoke until after we were getting done with this. I wanted to be as present as possible.
Yeah.
So
cool. Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. We had a very bigoted, sexist, homophobic, racist podcast today.
Yes, we did.
And I'm happy with the results.
Exactly.
All right, dude. Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Until next time, guys.
All right, y'all.